Houston Public Television's production, Houston Remember When, Just for Fun, is made possible in part through grants from the Fondren Foundation, Shell Oil Company Foundation, on behalf of the employees of Shell Oil Company, and Houston Endowment, a philanthropy endowed by Mr. and Mrs. Jesse H. Jones.
Hello, I'm Nancy Ames, your host for Houston Remember When, Just for Fun. In this program, our trip down memory lane continues as we look at amusement parks, the dancing era, racetracks, and other entertaining places and events that drew crowds and created lasting impressions on those who took part. The 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s brought the people of this community together in many ways and for many reasons. But more often than not, the thing pulling them together can be summed up in one word: fun. In 1929, you found it all along the banks of Vince's Bayou in Pasadena, and they called it the Whoopee.
We played all up and down those little ravines around Vince Bayou. And then, when they built the Whoopee, we felt like it was still part of what we owned, you see. In the meantime, Daddy had sold it to a Mr. T.A. Scott. And he had big dreams. But when they built that Whoopee, it was something that was so new, and no one had ever seen anything like it, that it was real exciting to have in the whole state of Texas, especially in Pasadena.
Well, I guess you would compare it with a roller coaster. You kind of got a funny feeling, but I was always frightened going over it, afraid we were going to have a wreck, but I would ride it in spite of all that.
It was made out of wood, had the same type of heels and everything, and but it was all planks, wood underneath, all the foundation, everything, and then the planks across it. So you drove your own car over it, and it was a lot of fun and very exciting, especially if you'd never been on many things before then. So it was real popular when it started off.
You know, I can't judge by how wide it was. I would just about wide enough for the cars to fit on it. They didn't have much room on either side.
Everybody that went over it, as they started down, you'd scream. And you know how it sounds like, whoopee. So I think that's where it got its name, is just from people hollering, whoopee.
Well, you had to go pretty fast to make those hills, you know, because you had to go up pretty high, you know. They had those hills pretty high on it. Some people went faster than others, and that's when you could have a wreck, though.
Well, my brother always wanted to do things a little bit different, Gene Barnes, and so he would go there with his bicycle. And the thing I remember is that they had a certain price that you had to pay to get your car over it. He thought you ought to be able to drive a bicycle free or for less money. And so he wanted to do it, say, for a nickel. But they'd let him go every once in a while.
And we had a good time watching everybody have a good time on the Whoopee. And of course, I got to ride it a lot, being around there all the time. And it was really frightening, but a lot of fun.
All I know is they brought a lot of excitement to our little area, except it didn't last long enough. I'd like to go over it now.
In the 20s and 30s, Luna Park spread over 36 acres on the south side of Buffalo Bayou at Houston Avenue. It was Houston's playground and billed as the Coney Island of Texas.
Well, Luna Park was almost out of town on that side over there. I remember you went out, I guess, Houston Avenue, way out Houston Avenue. It was on the right-hand side, and they had Ferris wheels out there, and they had all sorts of amusement devices.
Well, now, Luna Park made a different problem for us. See, we could walk to the Whoopee, but we had to have a car to go to Luna Park because it was, I think it was out in the Heights area. Anyway, it was the other side of Houston. Now, this was all mechanical. Now, we'd seen hobby horses before. We'd seen little things like that. But when they put in, and I can't remember what they called it, but it seemed like it was Scenic Railway. That was like the Whoopee, except it was in metal. And you got in somebody else, you got in their little car. And it was really exciting. Now, you talk about going Whoopee when you were on the Whoopee. When you got on that Scenic Railway, that was even more exciting.
Daddy would take us over there and let us ride all the rides, the roller coaster. Oh, it was more fun. And you know, I loved the roller coaster.
And I remember that was the only roller coaster. That was the first one and the only one I've ever ridden on. I would have no more part of a roller coaster again.
I just remember that it was the park to go to, and anytime anyone mentioned Luna Park, our eyes would get very big, thinking, well, that would just be great.
The best times I ever had when I was growing up was going to Luna Park. That was the biggest thing in town for us teenagers.
And also the thing that was called the Caterpillar. That was my favorite one to ride. I rode the roller coaster once or twice, but really, to me, the Caterpillar was a lot more fun than it was.
Worm-looking thing, and the green awning would come down over you. You'd get into the seat, and then they would cover it over, and you'd be in the dark.
But it was just kind of like a circus or a carnival. I guess a carnival would be better.
They led that horse up. He went up on steps, up to the top of the tank, you know, where he would jump off into it, and man would be on his back, and he would ride him down into that tank. It was scary, but of course it would be more scary to me than it would a grown person.
Oh, they had a Ferris wheel and a merry-go-round and that sort of thing for children. And we went there occasionally, but Luna Park was really more for the adults than it was for children.
Well, I remember how pretty it was and clean, and the dance floor was real pretty, and everybody was friendly, and just used to love to go there to dance.
They had sort of a dome-shaped building for dance provision, and my dad was the instigator of operating that dance part of that out there.
There's a fence that come about to your waist all around the dance floor where people that wanted to watch you dance and wouldn't get in the way. And I used to go watch the marathons.
They had a marathon dance out there in that place, and you used to go out there and sort of check in every once in a while. And go up and out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, see whether they were still dancing or not, and everything.
That's where you see who could dance the longest without stopping, without giving up. And some of them would dance, you know, all day and all night and all the next day without stopping. It was just fun to watch them.
The other thing that fascinated me about Luna Park, believe it or not, was the parking lot. The parking lot was over to, well, let's see, if you're facing Luna Park, it would have been to your left. And it slanted, a deep slant down towards the bayou. And you really had to be careful when you was parking your car there that you didn't slip down into the bayou.
Oh, I would say it must have been 2 blocks in there, you know, square, big, you know, to fit a dance hall in there at one time and a roller rink in there at another time. You know, it had to be pretty big.
Out at Luna Park, they had a roller skating rink, and their roller hockey team out there challenged us to a game. I think it was San Jacinto High School, really, at the time. And I could skate on roller skates, of course. I could go like a bat out of you know what, but I didn't have any way to stop. We got out there, and they had a flimsy little old net up there, nets on one end of it. And the first time I came down the floor, I shot at the puck and hit the net, and it knocked one side of the net off. Then next time I shot, they had wall, what do you call this stuff they do in the sheetrock, this sheetrock wall. Well, you don't have sheetrock walls in the hockey rink, and we were using regular hockey puck. I don't know how we did, but the floor was slick enough so we did it. And 3 times I shot and missed the net, and the puck went through the sheetrock wall. Another time I crashed into the other net and it demolished the net. They wouldn't let me come back and play anymore. To tell you the truth, I didn't want to.
Playland Park was always a popular place to go and evokes a range of memories from spine-tingling to romance.
They had horseback rides and you know, they had those little Shetland ponies, and so that was a pretty popular place, and they'd have birthday parties out there a lot. So I used to take my kids out there.
My father's name was James Archie Taylor, and something that they both knew and loved were horses, so I assumed that my grandfather purchased them because he was the one that had that great ability. And he and my father had the ponies at Playland Park for a number of years.
The pony rides were at the Playland Park. I remember them being there. And then later they were moved to Pasadena.
My daughter came along, and now we all liked horses, and we had them when we were kids, but we just rode horses. But she lived to ride a horse. So we had a pony ride out on South Shaver, and Daddy would take her out there every morning, and you could have 3 rides for a quarter.
Well, we used to go there every week with the children and let them ride the ponies.
You could have several kids out there at the same time riding those ponies, and they would race them.
And we had one pony called Midnight, who was really a very fast pony. You could give him a bottle of Grey Pet. I don't know if many people remember the Grey Pet drink. He would take it between his teeth and drink it down all by himself.
When my children were real young, we used to take them and let them ride the pony rides. There was a track, like a racetrack thing out there, and the kids would ride those ponies.
Practically everyone I meet today tells me, oh, I remember going to riding the ponies in Pasadena. It was something very unique, I think, for Pasadena.
During the war years, a new amusement center began to take shape in the 9200 block of South Main. And for the next 2 decades, Playland Park contributed much to the city's entertainment package.
It was more of a carnival than a theme park. It was just rides, different rides, a roller coaster and the different things. But it was still like going to heaven to us.
And when you come to the gate, it was a 10-cent admission fee. They had a big turnstile, and you just put a dime in and went in, and you could enjoy yourself at the park.
I remember Playland Park, but about the roller coaster, I was deathly afraid of that. No, I would never get on the roller coaster. But it was fun to be there, and I do remember the Ferris wheel. We loved the Ferris wheel. That was more my speed.
My favorite ride was the Ferris wheel. I loved to get up on top, and when they would stop it, it would rock, you know, and we'd have those few minutes together, sitting on top of the world, so to speak.
Playland Park was where everybody wanted to go and ride whatever. You know, all the great rides, the Ferris wheel, the Dodgem cars and all that.
A date was like you go to Playland Park and you see all the sights there, and then you ride the rides if you care to ride, or you play the games there, and then you sit on a bench and you talk and you smooch a little.
When I went to work for Mr. Lewis, he told me many a story about things that happened in his park. And he started it during the war of about 1943, and he started out with where he finally got enough money for the lot, and then he went to a lumber yard and talked to a man about getting credit to get lumber, and while he was in the process of getting the lumber, he was trying to build 2 or 3 different things at the same time. And the man thought that he wanted the lumber to build a big dance hall. But actually, Lewis used the lumber to build a roller coaster. And when the man come out to see where all the lumber was being used, he almost had a heart attack.
When they built that roller coaster, it was supposed to be the highest one around, you see. It was higher than anything we had ever seen, either at Luna Park or at Galveston. So that roller coaster, when it was finished, that attracted a whole lot of attention. We went out there a lot.
We take the girls out there and get them on the roller coaster because we knew they were going to hold on to you. So.
Oh, one time I rode the roller coaster 11 times straight.
First roller coaster I ever got on scared me half to death.
My mother had a friend. It was a gentleman that, he was probably about 45 at that time. And I kept wanting him to get on that roller coaster with me. So finally he agreed to get on that roller coaster. And we got on it and I was having the best time, and I looked over and it was stark terror. He was sitting there like that, holding onto the bars as hard as he could. His face was red, his eyes were wide. He hadn't realized what it was going to be like to be on that roller coaster.
So they went and rode on the roller coaster, and then after they got back, they went and rode this tilt-a-whirl. And we had eaten just before we went there, so I don't want to describe what happened after I got off the tilt-a-whirl.
You ever go out there?
Yeah, we'd go and play the arcades and all those, trying to grab toys and things out of those machines.
Well, they had the, you know, the hammer where you hit the, to demonstrate how strong you are. You know, you hit this bell and it went up, and to see how high you could lift that thing off the ground.
At Playland Park, they had a booth that you could go in this booth and put 50 cents in and record. You could talk or sing, whatever you wanted to do. And then I think it ran for 3 minutes, and then when it was over, the little, what they call them back in those days, acetates. It was about the size of a 45. They would drop out.
I remember they used to have these machines that had photos like on the Rolodex, and you put your money in there and you turn the handle and the photo would start flipping over, and it was like watching a movie. Very interesting.
And I've always been crazy about teddy bears, and every time we'd go I'd say, oh, you've got to get me a teddy bear. And he would throw the rings and try to get a teddy bear. So this particular night they had a huge pink and black teddy bear that I thought I had to have. Well, lo and behold, he won the teddy bear for me.
I mean, it was like a jukebox, but it was maybe like 30, 40 feet long and 10 feet high, but it would actually play music, and you could see the instruments moving and the cymbals bouncing and this thing hitting the drums and what have you. That's what really got me.
The main thing was the roller coaster, the bump'em cars, the Wow Mouse, and numerous other rides. There was a lot of little rides in the Kiddie Land area for the kids. And they had a train. The original train that came from Playland Park is now in Herman Park, operating on the railroad.
I think everyone in school had to ride the roller coaster and all of the other merry-go-rounds and everything else they had on the grounds. We thought that was a huge amusement park. Now that I think back, it probably wasn't all that large, but it had quite a few rides on it, and we had a lot of fun out there.
Large or small, Playland wasn't the same as the amusement park most area residents refer to as the pony rides on South Main. For 50 years, Kiddie Wonderland provided its own brand of entertainment for the children of Houston.
My husband and I started Kiddie Wonderland, and I don't know, it's probably around spring of '47.
Kiddie Wonderland was pony rides, and that was what we call the end of Main.
When I was a little girl, my mother would take us all, would gather us all up in the car and take us to ride the ponies.
There was something about being on a pony that to a kid is much more exciting than being on a huge horse. A huge horse feels like a dinosaur or an elephant to a kid, but somehow riding a pony is every kid's dream.
My youngest uncle, before he died, told me that he really wished he had all the nickels he'd paid for the pony rides because he'd probably be a rich man, because he'd get me over there and just one nickel wouldn't do. I'd want to ride again and again and again, and he'd let me, and it was great fun.
My favorite pony was a brown and white pony.
Oh, that was Calico. Every little child in Houston had rode Calico at some time and could even pronounce her name.
The only place we ever were allowed to eat popcorn was from the stands out on South Main. And they had them in cones of different colored paper. And oh, it'd take the longest time to decide which color you wanted. And after our popcorn, then we would have the pony rides.
I'm sure I have 8mm films of my brother and I falling off of those Shetland ponies, you know. And my mother running hysterically out there to save us.
You learn the cry of a child, whether they're hurt or not. And you don't want to upset all the children in the park, you know, by jumping up and screaming, oh, you know. So you take it as easy as you could.
Oh, that was a big treat for me when I was small to go out there and ride the ponies. Of course, you remember first started, I was afraid of the ponies.
It was 10 cents for a ride for a pony. It was 9 on the mechanical rides, and you got 11 for $1 on the mechanical rides.
I remember, you know, riding the little horses and driving in the little cars and riding the little boats.
They liked the merry-go-round and they liked the hand cars. And of course, the little children rode the little car ride, you know, the most liked it. It's, I don't know, they liked different rides, you know what I mean, as they had their favorite ride. We have the little train, of course. Most of them like to ride the train because they like to hear the whistle blow. Of course, it always blowed by the time that I was trying to sell tickets. I couldn't hear a thing.
I don't think I ever rode the horses there, but by the time my children came along, we were able to take them there on a frequent basis.
And all of my children rode on those little pony rides and had their pictures taken, and that's part of their memory.
I took my granddaughter out there to ride the ponies, and when the caretaker said, this pony has been here for 15 years, so it could have easily been the same little pony that one of my daughters had ridden when she was a baby.
The pony rides, the Whoopee, Playland, and Luna Amusement Park aren't the only places where Houstonians found entertainment. There's a lot more coming up on Houston Remember When, just for fun. Dancing is next, so stay poised. Welcome back to Houston Remember When, just for fun. Generations of Houstonians will tell you that dancing was one of the great ways to spend a night on the town. The Aragon Ballroom in downtown Houston played a key role in launching the community's dance era.
Aragon was ballroom was on the 10.5 Rush Street between Main and Fannin Street in downtown Houston.
His original name was Matt Mellons, and I think he kept that for about 11 years. But every year when they had their dancing convention, Daddy took my 2 older sisters to it. He ran across a place in Chicago called Aragon. He fell in love with it, so he came home and changed his name to the Aragon Ballroom.
It was a beautiful building as far as the ballroom is concerned, of the curved ceilings and the lighting effects that you had within it. It's an outstanding place for, well, sort of a romantic atmosphere about it.
And the Aragon Ballroom had one of those beautiful, lighted, mirrored balls, you know, that hung in the middle of the ballroom, and it would rotate, and everybody could just see themselves glittering in the dark with this great thing that kept rotating.
So while the people were dancing, Daddy would turn off all the lights and put those lights on. And as the ball was turning around, all these different colors sparkling off of those mirrors would be all over the place, dance floor and everything.
Well, that was, well, if you had a boyfriend, you like to go there again, you know. And it was good. It had a good floor. Mostly, you notice dance floors, not dance halls, you know.
The Aragon Ballroom is out known particularly for its dance floor. It was made out of an outstanding maple flooring, and it was well polished and waxed daily for the dancing. You could slide. In fact, as a kid, I could slide 10 feet on that thing without falling down.
This one fellow named Curly Broadnax, who was the best dancer in this city. And all the girls wanted to dance with him, but he never asked me at Linder Lake. But I did dance with him once at the Aragon. I sneaked in there and sat down trying to hide just to see what was going on up there. And he came and asked me to dance. So I danced with him one time and then ran for the bus stop because I was too young to be in there.
My grandmother and I would ride the train to Houston and check in at the Cotton Hotel, and I would hear the band in the Aragon playing until 12 and 1 o'clock at night and loved every minute of it. But of course my grandmother wouldn't dare let me go near the place.
The marathon dancing, they would dance, so I think those who were in the contest, they would dance 2 or 3 hours and then maybe have a 5-10 minute break, something like that through the time. But it'd go on for days and days. One thing I remember about particularly, there was a little lady that the name has been known nationally now, won that marathon contest. Her name was Ginger Rogers.
During the war at Ellington Field, my first sergeant and his girlfriend and my date and I would go to the Aragon Ballroom to hear the bands. A local band played there quite a lot, a gentleman by the name of Vic Incerillo. A lot of Houstonians will remember him.
Well, there were some friends that I had in school, and one of my friends had a brother that was leaving for the Marines, and she said, would you sing for him? I said, well, I don't know how to sing. She says, yes, you do. She says, let's go. And he took me over there to the Aragon Ballroom, and I was ready to go. So I went on ahead and sang several songs for them, and they paid me $10. I was, really, I thought I was a movie star at the time. I was so enthused about it.
There was always a friendliness of being greeted into the place first. I can remember my dad standing at the entrance and greet everybody that would walk in, which is a job that he gave me in later years.
At the end of the time, particularly when they had to close at midnight on account of the laws, they'd always play Good Night, Ladies. That was the way that everyone knew to go home.
The Rice Hotel also catered to dancing crowds with its novel Rice Roof location.
The Rice Roof was famous for dancing and for people going there, particularly on Friday and Saturday nights. And they always had a very nice orchestra, and they played for the dancers as well as for the diners, and it was the gathering point in Houston.
Well, the Rice Roof, of course, covered the whole building, but on the east side, they had a platform where they had bands that came up and played in the afternoon and also at night, depending on the weather. And people of Houston would have all kind of things going on up there, like the ladies would have afternoon teas with a band, and you know, it was just a fine place to be. And they dressed me up like a sailor.
It was called SS Rice. It was decorated with life preservers around the walls, Well, actually, it wasn't a wall. It was just a balcony to keep you from falling off. Open air. The wind swept through it. And the waiters all wore nautical-looking uniforms. And it was a place that you could, if you had $1, if your date didn't order much more than a Coke, you could have a good time and dance to a big-name band.
They always had a good band. You could go up there for lunch, and there would be Herman Wallman and his orchestra would be playing for lunch up there on a weekday, Monday through Saturday. And then in the evening, there would be dinner dancing there. The things that we played with my band before the war were all college dances.
And I remember when Dorothy L'Amour came there with a big band, and she was singing in the band. And she'd sit up there on her chair, you know, till time to sing, and we'd just stand there goggle-eyed looking at this gorgeous Dorothy L'Amour, not knowing that later on she was going to become a famous movie star. Same way with Perry Como. I can remember Perry Como singing with a band, and the singer always sat in a chair until it was his turn to sing. And he'd get up and sing, then go sit down again.
It was always a very lovely, charming place. It was the only place to go of its kind in Houston.
Houston's 3rd Ward was the site for the pioneering Dorado Ballroom. That location became a showcase for black entertainers.
I think the Dorado opened around 41. It was a big deal because everything had been at the Harlem Grill. And so when the Dorado opened, everything moved to 3rd Ward. And that was the place, what they call it, the home of happy feet.
The Dorado has hosted so many activities for black people. And it was something different because the Dorado was also owned by black people, Mr. and Mrs. Dupree.
Although it was a ballroom, the ballroom was upstairs. Downstairs, they had nice places for businesses to rent. And of course, that was not in the black community then.
Well, the Dorado was a booming business at that time. Not only was it a nightclub, it had a restaurant in it and served food during the day. A lot of people frequented the Dorado for very, very good meals. Now, occasionally, we would drop in there and eat during the day.
Anna Dupree built the Dorado Ballroom, and she set aside time for the teenagers whose parents, you know, allowed them to go to they called it the kid dances.
And at night, the older people went, you know, yeah. And of course, the age of the crowd depended on the entertainer that was there that particular night. And you had jazz musicians play there, you had the blues, and rhythm and blues, and like I say, you had the club, fraternities all. They had their dances and all, and entertainment there also, in the club. So it just depends on, all ages went to the Dorado.
It was a big time. Yeah, when you played the Dorado Ballroom, as a youngster, what it meant to me, the first time I worked the Dorado Ballroom was in 1949 with a group called Heights Blvd.
They had the Milton Larkin band that played, and they just played, you know, regular jazz, upbeat music for the teenagers. And of course, our era, we did the what they call a swing out.
At that time, they swung out. You know, you swing out and you swing the woman out and pull her back. They don't do that anymore. They don't touch each other. You don't know who dancing with who nowadays, do you?
Beautiful dance floor. Back in those days, those floors were highly waxed, and they really kept them up. They were really nice dance floor. You could, with a pair of leather shoes on, you could slide all the way across the floor.
During the war, the Second World War, it was just packed nightly with the soldiers and persons who wanted to go dancing and wanted to pay a fee.
I tell you what, it was a lot of cars parked around it, and it was a real joyful and real entertainment center at that time. I tell you that.
The El Dorado was just mainly the local good musicians. It was a band that people just go to the El Dorado to see because everybody knew everybody. It was like a big family. Even with the time with the Pluma Davis's band, you see the same people there every weekend. They have their same tables every weekend, that kind of a thing.
Well, I can remember the El Dorado because I was a young lady going to TSU, and we would frequent the El Dorado because at the El Dorado you had a young gentleman that we knew real well that was playing his band, the Otis Turner Band.
I mean, nothing was greater than that. Playing at the El Dorado Ballroom was like heaven. Because when you played the El Dorado Ballroom, it's like it was the same kind of a feeling when you go to New York and play the Apollo Theater for the first time. You know, this is during that period when you played the Apollo Theater. That was it. You couldn't go any higher than that. Well, the El Dorado Ballroom, that's what it meant to me. When I played the El Dorado Ballroom, that was heaven.
An opportunity to dance and hear great music drew many people to clubs near what is now the Medical Center. Back then, the location, and one club in particular, was called the End of Main.
Well, I went, even though my daddy owned a dance hall, I used to go at the End of Main when I was in high school to go dancing, because that's where all high school kids went.
The End of Main was, they actually called it the End of Main, but it was on Fannin Street, and it was a few blocks south of Holcomb Boulevard. And it was on the second floor. It was you walked up some steps, and it was open air because of no air conditioning. It was open air all the way around the sides.
Mr. Eisman had the End of Main when my husband and I were dating, and we went out there. And of course, the name The End of Main was very well known.
First date we went out to, my husband and I went out to End of Main, and it was about 6 of us. And I had to go to work early the next morning, so I went home. I said, "You can take me home at 12 o'clock. I gotta get some sleep." I never thought I'd see him again because he loved to dance. He was really a dancer.
Buddy Rogers and his band came to town. There were many others also that I can't think of at the moment, but we really did love the Buddy Rogers because he played every instrument in the band. And the gals, you know, wore bobby soxes in those days, and it was great.
Some of the songs we sung too, there was "Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree" and "Over There" and "Till You Come Home," and something that nobody can define nowadays is called the Fat Foot Bluesy. And of course the Jitterbug, we danced all those.
Of course Stardust, I guess everybody loved Stardust. And Till the End of Time. I like little cutesy songs sometimes, like the Bonnie Baker thing of "Oh Johnny." And she had another one called "Billy," I believe. There just was hardly ever a song that I didn't care for.
I know Mr. Eisman was, he ran a tight ship. There was never any drinking. He loved young people, but they had to meet his standards. So, you know, people felt good about their young people going out there for that very reason, because he did run a nice place.
Before there was any shamrock, at the End of Main there was a dance hall that everybody went to called the Hi-Hat. And it was just, you know, Depression was on, it had a Nickelodeon, and you'd get a pitcher of beer and sit at a table and have a beer and get up and dance to the Nickelodeon.
It was loud. It was really loud. Just a little different atmosphere.
The Hi-Hat was my favorite spot. You had a great big Nickelodeon for a quarter. I mean, you could play like 10 tunes and could dance half the night away. Of course, none of these places were air conditioned, so they had great big fans blowing, and you just worked up a nice appetite and a nice sweat, so to speak.
And the hi-hat was in the late 30s and during the 40s, and it was one of the most popular clubs in Houston, and it was well run. George Colleen and his wife ran it and owned it, and it was a very, very, very popular place, and they played beautiful music and good food and good entertainment, and it was very special to a lot of the Rice students because it was close by.
It was a younger place where younger people went, and they had a jukebox. They didn't have the orchestras. It was a smaller place, smaller scale and all that, but it was very popular.
The hi-hat and the Plantation, they were roaring away in those days, and we'd go dancing. You know, every chance we could get, weeknights, whenever. 'Cause we both loved to dance.
It's time to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have more of your favorite dance locations and dance clubs. I know you don't want to miss the Plantation, Southern Dinner Club, Blossom Heath, and the Bronze Peacock. So don't put away those dancing shoes yet. We'll be back in a minute. Hi, I'm Nancy Ames. Welcome back. The community supported a number of popular ballrooms during this period. If you weren't at the Hi-Hat or the End of Main, then you might be giving the Plantation a try.
The Plantation was a great big ballroom out off of South Main, past Prince's, on the left. It was really not a building. If I remember right, it had a fabric, the roof inside was a fabric, hanging fabric, and I think it was open air with canvas, you know, these old rolling canvases that you could close the windows off in the ballroom. I feel sure that it was open air because I remember if you'd walk along the sides of the windows, the floor would be warped because of rain. But it had a great dance floor out in the middle. Acoustics were wonderful. It wasn't fancy, but it was nice.
At the Plantation, they would get big name orchestras, and they would come and play for maybe a 2-week stint. And then they would have other big name orchestras that would follow them, and it was the band era.
The bands were bands like Jimmy Dorsey, Woody Herman, Stan Kenton, a lot of bands you never heard of out of Chicago and New York, but good bands. And our Air Force band at Ellington Field would play there on Sunday afternoons, which we loved doing because we got to play for the public rather than just a bunch of soldiers and their girlfriends.
And Bobby Meeker had a band out of Chicago. Why, he came down here to play at the Plantation. He played a 14-week engagement. No, this is the second time he came down, and he had decided to disband and buy the old Plantation building and reopen.
Had a dirt road getting to it. You had to drive quite a distance. And you got there, and it was a nice, new, pretty building.
And I sent all my patio furniture out for the entrance of the Plantation when it first opened. And he charged $1 entrance fee. Mr. Meekers told me that night, he said if it had rained the night that I opened, he said I would have been out of business because we did not have, we just had a rough road into the Plantation from the main street.
And many bands came in and out of there. It was probably one of the most popular for bands to come visit and do things. I think perhaps even more than the Rice Roof.
They had a marvelous dance floor and always live music and wooden tables and falling apart wooden chairs all jammed together. They did have photographers traveling around taking everyone's picture, which was a lot of fun.
It was fine if you really wanted to dance because they had so much space and quality orchestras. And at one time, I even took pictures out there. I was a camera girl. And I'd just go through the hall, and anybody wanted a picture made, you would take the picture and have it developed the same evening and give it back to them.
I went to the Plantation when I was single, and I belonged to a club called the Core Club Girls, and we've had tea dances at the Plantation every Sunday afternoon during the war. And we had good times there. And when my husband would come home for a weekend from the war, from the service, he would go out to the dance with me.
A tea dance is a dance that's held in the afternoon. It's basically the same thing, it's just an early dance, and it was quite popular because a lot of the servicemen in those days would maybe have to be back on the base early, and if you had a tea dance maybe from 2 to 4 or 2 to 5 or something like that.
But you just went there to dance mostly and entertain the boys, you know, they had dancing.
The night that the Japanese surrendered, I happened to go out to the Plantation, and there was a tremendous victory party there that evening, and people just from all over Houston were there. The tables, every table was taken. People were sitting in the aisles, standing all over the place, and it was a beautiful, beautiful evening.
There were many great ballrooms and clubs in the area, often serving as cultural meeting places.
The Palladium nightclub was out on South Main next to Playland, the Plantation and Palladium. There were 2 of them out there, very old buildings, and they would bring in some top bands, and I used to go out there and dance. There was another place very famous downtown, Cook's Hoedown, Cook's Club, and I went there. I remember I saw Harry James was playing there one time when I was there. I went out to many other clubs that we'd go to. There was a place on Main, 105 Main was very famous, and they had bands that used to play out there.
We went to the Havana Club, 105, Roseland. The 105 was on Sunday nights. Roseland was a matinee on Sundays, and Havana was on Saturday nights.
Mainly it was the full band, like the Glenn Miller area type music with the horns and some violins, but it was dancing music, the rumbas, the cha-cha-chas, the polkas, the always polkas, the waltzes, the schottisches, variety music.
At that time, the only dances, well, I'm going back to the early, maybe 1940s or middle 1940s. The dances that we used to go to would be at the Blossom Heath.
That was a place where everybody had to celebrate their weddings, and it was free of charge, and really and truly it was a very, very nice place to have a wedding dance.
Also at these dances is where you got to meet your future wife. That's how I met my wife, at one of the Familias Unidas dances. And we knew she came from a good family, and this is where you go to find people that come from good families, called good families. And after a period of time, we courted and basically got married.
Oh, dancing by all means. We always went dancing. We had matinees downtown. We'd get together, a bunch of girls, and go to the matinees. Because at that time, our parents were so strict, and we had to go to matinees so we wouldn't be on the street at night. And so that was enjoyable.
And a whole bunch of us teenagers used to go there because they used to play Mexican music. Boleros, corridos, you name it. And all our friends would be there. Now this was a matinee. It usually started at 2 and went up to, I think, 5 or 6 o'clock. So I remember going there and dancing.
As the dance era grew, club settings also became very popular. Locations like the Southern Dinner Club could attract large crowds with a single performer.
And probably one of the most wonderful places to go was the Southern Dinner Club. And it had a beautiful dance floor, and that's where the famous Peck Kelly played the piano. And as you all native Houstonians remember, that Peck Kelly was one of the most brilliant musicians ever.
Peck Kiddie was the best piano player I ever heard in my life. He could really play Beat Me Daddy A to the Bar and some of those other ones like that. And
Why he didn't play nationally, I don't know, except I think he just didn't want to.
Everybody in the business wanted to hear Peck. And Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, any number of people tried to get Peck to come with their band and leave Houston. Or they would try to get him to record. And he didn't want to record, and he didn't want to leave Houston. The Southern Dinner Club was sort of one of the really elite dinner clubs in town. It was sort of the social hub.
Oh, well, when you had a date, everyone had a date, but knowing everyone, you danced with everyone there at the table, and all of the guys danced with all of the other girls, and usually there were one or two other tables of folks that you knew, so you never danced with the same person all night long. It was just like a small private party in a very large room with lots of good music.
And people visited and they table hopped, and every now and then the club would bring in a featured singer. I remember Sally Rand, the famous fan dancer, played the Southern Dinner Club before it closed with Benny Bell's band. I think I worked it. Yes, I know I did. It went the way of so many downtown places and finally closed in the early 50s, I believe.
In Houston's 5th Ward, Don Robey's Bronze Peacock set a new standard for black entertainment clubs.
Bronze Peacock was a beautiful, well, it was the most beautiful club I had ever seen.
Bronze Peacock was a club that played a lot of acts out there. T-Bone Walker, Big Joe Turner, Gatemouth Brown, Tiny Bradshaw. Just plenty acts out there.
Well, Gatemouth Brown was the Bronze Peacock. I think Gatemouth Brown was one of Rober's first artists that he recorded. And of course, by him being on the Peacock record label, he was one of the regular performers.
Now, I used to go to this club, and you could sit around like a ringside, and all the stage was built up. And he put Gatemouth in a white. I've never seen Gatemouth dressed this good. He had him in a white tuxedo, all right? Gatemouth could sing and play. I used to go there to see Gatemouth Brown.
It was a small club. And one thing, the unique thing about the Bronze Peacock, they had knockers. Little knockers where, instead of clapping, you just knock on the table.
He would have a show at the City Auditorium. The after party was at the Peacock all night long. That was Don Robey.
When they had the big dances, they had a way of pulling the whole crowd to their nightclubs or whatever they had going on to the after party. And he was unique that he would be, that you could do that. That's good.
That's where I first heard about after parties, was at the Peacock. And then the people leave from downtown going to the Peacock. Somebody that didn't go downtown, they end up at the Peacock anyway.
At the Peacock, you had a show, you had dance, you had food, and plus atmosphere.
In the atmosphere of the 30s and 40s, one of the more innovative clubs, the Reno, was nationally known for creative floor shows and entertainment.
It was on Old Spanish Trail and Scott Street, the Reno Club. And I was one that named it, and I don't know why, but it sounded right.
In the daytime, it was a drive-in, and they had, let's say, big, beautiful women as their car hops, and it was quite an attraction, and they really were beautiful. And remember going there and sitting in the car and having them come and wait on you. And I knew that in the evening that they had a club, but I guess I was too young to go there at that time, but it was a fun place.
$2.20 to get in, and you bring your own bottle to serve beer. And it was so tight in there, I don't know how they could dance, but they'd always have a full show.
There was never a gap of time where there wasn't some sort of entertainment going on. Whether it be the orchestra playing dance music, or someone doing comedy, or someone singing and doing comedy in between the songs, or a floor show. So it was just a constant entertainment. And then the highlight would be the two-ton chorus.
And they would come out and open the show, do 2 or 3 numbers as a line of dancers like the Rockettes. And I'll never forget the one number we used to laugh and have fun singing an old Army tune called "We Did It Before and We Can Do It Again," and they would high kick and dance.
They were very serious about their jobs because they got a lot of perks out of that. My grandfather advertised daily. I mean, he was plastered all over the papers all the time, and there were always articles, ads, something going on in the paper. And as a result of this, these girls, really became big celebrities. And they took what they did very seriously and with a lot of pride.
Just about everything. Maybe a fan dancer once in a while, but not very often, due to my mother probably. And singers, just everything. Sophie Parker was the one we had her a lot.
There was one particular act where there was a woman who had and she wore like a circus outfit, and she had a guy in a horse suit, and she's making this guy, do all these tricks that you would normally see a person doing at the circus with a horse. And people would applaud, like the horse was really smart. They'd lose track of the fact that there was a person in this horse suit, And usually whenever they had celebrities there, they got them up to do, whatever it was they did, at least one number. Bob Hope was a guest there one night, a customer. And of course they got him up, and he said a few words about the war effort, and I believe probably did a little routine, a few jokes. Sonia Henney, Sophie Tucker, Jerry Colonna, who was a big comedian, film star in those days.
The waitresses and the girls, they called my father Pappy and my mother Mammy, so naturally I'd be daughter. Nobody knew my name, I was daughter. But we had a close little knit family there.
I've talked to people who are still around that used to go there on a regular basis, and they said it was the most fun they ever had in their life. And I think this was real important during those days because there was so much agonizing over the war, and this was something that lifted everybody's spirits.
The post-World War II years were the heyday of the dance clubs. One returning war veteran brought his new club idea to the city, and it met with great success.
A cousin of mine, Abe Jamel, that was a big war hero, one of the biggest war hero from Houston's time after World War II. He comes home, and after 3 or 4 years, he opens the Congo Jungle on Alameda Street, and I think that became a favorite place for my wife and I.
Abe Jamel owned it. He decorated the interior with palm trees and coconuts and pictures of lions and monkeys. Oh, it was very, very colorful.
It was charming. It was beautiful and charming, and with the lights low and what have you, it was just a really nice atmosphere.
All of the hostess and the waitresses, they would all wear sarongs, and they would, it was all jungle looking. They'd have leopard skins on, and it was a jungle atmosphere.
The Congo Jungle was 3 times as big as any other club in town. It was a huge place, and it was jam-packed, night after night after night.
Well, the very first orchestra was Joe Romero and his orchestra, and he was very good. And he hired this nightclub singer. She just walked in when he was making interviews to hire people, and she had a beautiful voice. Her name was Jan Stewart.
I was there the night that the Congo Jungle opened. I was a singing waitress. And you have never seen such a crowd. That place just came on with a bang.
And he made them play this song, this bingo, bango, bongo, I don't want to leave the jungle, and they would dance to that, you know, and they'd all go round in the circle, and people seemed to enjoy it.
And Abe was a very pleasant man to work for. We got along great. He would let us rehearse bands there. We had a little jazz band that just played for fun in the early 50s called the Gulf Coast Giants of Jazz, and we'd play a lot of concerts at the Congo Jungle.
He also hired Johnny Scat Davis. He was a big name band in those days, like a 12-piece band. And the song he sang was, If I Knew You Were Coming, I'd have baked a cake. That was the theme song.
Bill Roberts and Abe Jamil were real close, and at one point when Bill Roberts was writing his column, he invited Abe to write a column once a week about the nightlife or Congo night at the Congo Jungle, and it was, I think, once a week.
And my husband's column was called Congoing with Abe, you know, and it would have his picture there.
Yeah, they would have amateur night with singers and dancers, and it was a real fun affair. And there were some very good entertainers, and mostly from the local area, from the Houston area, and there was some very good performances there, and everybody looked forward to it.
Someone did give him a baby lion, and he raised it there and kept it in a cage in the back of the club in this room.
Roxy was, she was a beautiful little thing. She was, but she was, you didn't want to get too close to her because she'd bat at you.
She got where she ate like 20 pounds of horse meat a day. She was getting expensive too.
She got loose one night and went running through the club. And you have never seen people move so fast.
Well, my husband Abe had to close the nightclub after 10 years because the private clubs came in business, and where people brought their bottle and left it at the club and they paid dues. That seemed to be the popular thing, and all the nightclubs like the Congo Jungle practically closed up at that time, and things changed. It was just becoming a new era.
We're going to take another short break now, but there's still a lot more to come. In the next segment, we'll take a look at Epsom Downs and the early days of auto racing in Houston. Later in the show, we'll look back at the Pin Oak Horse Show, Buff Stadium, and the city's first ice rink, the Polar Wave Ice Palace. We'll be right back. Racing has always been a fascination for our community. By the late 20s, auto racing was becoming a very popular sport, and drivers were competing at Houston Speedway. Then in 1933, with pari-mutuel betting legalized, horse racing took center stage, and Houston built its first modern track.
Epsom Downs was an honest-to-goodness first racehorse track in the city of Houston back in the 30s.
Beautiful, beautiful racetrack. Big grandstand, big stands, clubs, everything that any racetrack would have.
I think there was a racetrack in England named Epsom Downs. And anything English had to be something real nice to do with horses. So I think that's why they named it that. I don't really know, but that's my guess.
And they'd have all those horses lined up and couldn't get them in their little place, you know. I'd want to get out there and help them get them in there. But then the race itself was real exciting. But it was such a long race that you couldn't see if your horse was winning on the other side of the track, you see. But it was a real novelty to have it.
It was very, very hot because you're dressed up for church and you go straight on out there. There were the bleachers down close to the track, and it was exciting to see the horses run, and they would come up to the rail so you could pat them.
If you didn't have the money and you knew where to go around the side of it, you could just kind of walk in and get under the stadium and get in free, and we did that, most of it.
One time, my husband and I went, and I won more than he did because I bet on the color of the horse. If it was that off color, that's the one I would bet on. And he studied all the, how much weight the horse had carried and all those good things. But it was fun.
I used to go out to the races with my aunt, and of course we always tried to get tips from the jockeys out there, and sometimes they were terrible tips. The only good one I ever got, I should have taken it more seriously. One day Westrope said, I got a horse named Don Day that's going to go pretty good tomorrow. I go out there, it's a muddy track, horse is 20 to 1. I said, I don't know why it's good. Don't think that thing do much. So I bet $2 on him. Horse won by 4 lengths. I collected $42 for my $2.
My grandmother would go nearly every Saturday afternoon. She loved it. She was not by any means your typical gambling lady type. She jokingly told the ladies who were trying to figure out some way to raise money for the church, said, well, you all give me $50 to $100 and I'll really bring you some money back from Epsom Downs.
So one day he asked me to go to him with Epsom Downs, and it was during school time, so I skipped school and I went with my daddy. And as we were walking to our seats, this tall, good-looking, red-headed lady says, hello, Elizabeth. And I look up, it's my history teacher. She was playing hooky too. So my daddy says, how in the world do you know such a good-looking woman like that? And he wouldn't believe she was my history teacher.
He says, I've got a horse that's going to run the 5th race out here, and we've handicapped him, and I can tell you now, if you've got any money at all, go out there and bet $10, $15, $20 on the horse that's going to win. So Dad had to work. So he gives the money to Mom. I think he gave her $25 or $50. I don't remember the amount. And he says, you and Sonny go out to the racetrack. Here's the race, and here's the horse. And you bet the money on this horse. So we go out there, and the horses come out and walk around. You see what they look like, before each race. And Mama's looking at this horse, and she says, that's the skinniest looking, sorriest horse I have ever seen. There's no way that horse is going to win. And she's talking to me like I knew what she was talking about, because I was pretty young. And I said, Mom, Dad said, just bet on the horse. It belongs to Uncle Ed. She says, that horse is terrible looking. So I don't know what happened, but she bet on a different horse. And of course, Uncle Ed's horse won and paid like 25 to 1. And of course, Dad got the news by telephone that the horse had won. So he's waiting for us to come home with all that money. And of course, Mama's devastated. She says, Sonny boy, I don't think I'm going home. I said, what you gonna do, Mom?
I would go out there and look at the horses and try to figure out the one I wanted to bet on. And occasionally would lose a little bit of money and never won any. But anyhow, it was fun to go. And I only went a few times because by the time we were ready to go, it was shut down.
In the late 1930s, midget car racing put the emphasis back on the automobile, and the community flocked to the Houston Speed Bowl.
The Houston Speed Bowl across from Old Buff Stadium was built in 1937, and I went to my first race there in 1938. It was constructed in 1937, and they raced feverishly, 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41.
When we would sit up in the knothole gang in the late 30s, we got an extra treat. They built the midget auto races across St. Bernard. And so we could go up into the grandstand and we could watch the ball game, and then we could watch the midget auto races.
So you could go up to the, way up in the higher seats at the stadium, and you look down, you see across. You could see them, barely see them car racing. And we used to live out Navigation and Canal, and you could hear the noise of them cars speeding.
I began going to the Houston Speed Bowl when I was just a kid and didn't have the money for an admission ticket, so I used to slip in. And it was pretty easy then for a young kid, 8 or 9 years old, to slip in the pits, and then from the pits I'd stay for a while and get up into the grandstands.
Midget car was one that had a little bit smaller wheels than a regular stock car. It had the smaller engine, but the weight to horsepower ratio was great. They were very responsive. You just never pushed the throttle on anything that responds as fast as a midget.
And they started out running motorcycle engines, and the old Harley Davidsons and Hendersons and some of those Alto outboards were running in midgets with a lot of success. They were quick, they were very noisy, and they would get you where you wanted to go.
In a midget, you don't have all that room in there for a brake inside. Now they have them all inside, but you had the handbrake on the left side, and the midgets drove so easy that one hand was all you needed. In other words, they were real easy to drive, real responsive with the throttle. In other words, you could just drive the car strictly with the throttle if you wanted to.
In the heyday of the Houston Speed Bowl, we had a number of drivers that were really, really good, and probably the most popular, the most talented was by far Doc Cossey. Doc Cossey was a real fine gentleman, a terrific race car driver, probably, in my opinion, one of the best ever.
Doc Cossey was, I guess you would call him the A.J. Foyt of that time. He would get out in front, and he won most of the races.
Doc Cossey would come out of the pits, and he would be wide open. When he hit the pit gate and onto the track, he was wide open, and he held it wide open all the way around. He made his 2 or 3 or 4 laps, what he was going to run, and he shut it off in the backstretch and coasted into the pits, and you knew Doc Cossey had been there. He was terrific.
World War II put drivers and car racing on hold. But in the years following the war, Playland opened a new racing facility next to the park.
After December of '41, racing was pretty much curtailed by the government. They didn't want people running gasoline, and they were saving tires and everything for the war effort. So they curtailed the racing series all over the country in early '42.
Naturally, the war kept it all under wraps until after the war. In about '45, they started having races at Playland.
When you came into Playland Park and you walked all the way through the amusement park and out the back end, you were looking right in the middle of the 3rd and 4th turn.
They used 40 Ford coupes, 38 Chevy coupes. They were light. The reason that they used them is because they were light, and a lot of the guys I think they liked the body style too. They were plentiful.
At Playland Park, I remember, gee, all kinds of fun. It was the races. Used to love to go to the stock car races, and A.J. Foyt was just a kid, and he was racing out there. I remember his name so well.
His dad raced. He was well seasoned, even though he was quite young. He knew how to handle a race car, and it was just a matter of time that he become one of the better drivers around the country, and that what he wanted to do.
It was just such a lively, ruckus and raw type environment, you know, because the drivers were very reckless then, and they had a huge fence to protect the crowd. And so you were looking through this fence at the track and at the Ferris wheel too. And it just, some of the drivers like Buddy Rackley and Billy Wade and people like that were just you know, would do anything to win.
When we started racing here at Playland, Billy Wade, M.J. Burton, George Nash, Charlie Shiles, I could go on and name them from now on. There was just abundance of them.
It really ended up being just a hobby and something you enjoy, and you enjoy the challenge. You enjoy when a named shoe, we call them, somebody that went fast, somebody that was probably making a living at it or a bigger living at it than you were, that they would come to town and give you an opportunity to see just how well you did with them.
And even though there was money, you just was having fun running in there, spending them out and so forth. And that's the start.
Burton run a quarter mile with us, Billy Wade, George Nash, myself. There was about 10 competitors, good drivers out there. After we all got ironed out and learned how to drive. It was racing then. You'd get tangled up every now and then, but normally it was close racing.
It was just a very different atmosphere then. It was not so civilized. It was fun and out there and real frontier type, relatively speaking, time than now, you know, looking back at it. You know, Houston really had a lot of personality then.
You can only have one winner. And that's what everybody is trying to learn, how to outsmart your competitor.
It was a lot of fun. You know, it's according to who rubs you one way or you rub them the other way, and it's like I always kind of thought of it as playing checkers. Whoever gets to this point is going to be at that point next. You know, it's if you can get him out of that point and you can get in that hole, well, you're all right. You know, so it was just a rubbing contest. We raced, but you know, we had a lot of respect for each other too.
I just enjoyed racing those old cars, running into people actually, to start with. Now that's the way I started off in '49, and of course it didn't take long to change that attitude. I had help getting it changed. A guy by the name of Jimmy Higgs. Well, I spun him out, and then I was sitting there talking to my brother, and he got his old car started and came across the street and run broadside into mine. And that's the way he straightened me out.
M.J. Burton and his brother, Don Burton, both were one of those that started out at Playland when they really came into being what a good race car driver is. And he had his own cars, and he was able to have good equipment, and he was fortunate enough to have a mechanic that helped him on it. And in fact, 2 or 3 of them over the years, I understand, with him for years and years, which made a great team. And anytime you outrun MJ, you thought you really done something.
The Playland Park track, the pits were wide open. You could sit in the stands and you could look down into the pits and see what was going on. Even though you were a little bit of distance from them, you could still see what was going on.
Even in the pit area, it was almost just as interesting to watch the pit area as it was the track, because there was so much busy work going on and people pulling off the track or people cussing each other or fighters cussing each other. And you know, it was almost just as interesting to watch this huge pit area in the middle as it was the track.
Race car drivers and race car people really, through and through, are a totally different breed. I mean, you have to know these people and be around them, know their kind of the inner workings of them.
The old driver was superstitious of peanuts and green. But my car was two-tone green, and Doc Cossey, he was from the old driving bunch. He wouldn't even get around me in the warm-up. I said, well, now it's really true. I didn't believe all this here. And if you go over and throw peanuts in their car, oh man, they'd come unglued.
There was no uniform, there was no nothing. In other words, everyone was shirt sleeves. These little helmets we had were you know, leather down at the bottom, but plastic at the top. There was just no nothing.
They didn't know what a roll bar was. They had, you could go to Sears and Roebuck and buy a leather strap off of some of the horse department. That's what we put on the door. We just used a leather strap on the door. And I don't recall even what we had for a seat belt. I don't even know whether we had one or not. I'm sure we did, though. I think that was a requirement. But we're still sitting on just an old stock seat.
I just remember the smells of the tires burning and the oil burning, the sounds of the tires squealing, and it was just, I don't know, something that gets in your blood and you never get it out, you know.
Along about late 47, they started building a horse race track called Arrowhead Park. Arrowhead Park was located on the OST before you got to South Main.
The Arrowhead was a horse track. It was a half-mile horse track, and you know, to go out there and run through those chug holes, and it just really exciting that you could do something like that and not have to worry about getting in trouble on weekends.
It had all the amenities that the horse race people expected. It was a much nicer facility than Playland.
Well, you could do anything with a car on dirt. In other words, you could turn it sideways, anything you wanted to do. You could pass much easier. In other words, on dirt, you just run and pitch the car, and then get back and use the throttle all the way out. It was just a lot more fun, I thought.
Tommy Mangrum was one of the best dirt drivers I ever seen, and he drove it like you're trying to tear something up. That's the only way to drive dirt. The bigger the hole, the harder you hit it. And you really there was an art hitting the hole just right and not making the car come up or get out of shape or spin out or turn over or something like that.
If you tore your car up, like you've seen some pictures of some of the cars tore up, they was out there the next week. It looked like, matter of fact, you could even tell they ever been wrecked. We'd have them back out there because back then we loved racing.
You know, if you had your own car, you had to work on it, and that pretty well designated whether you got it ready or not, whether you had the money to get it ready, whether the car was ready when you got it there. You know, so if you drove for someone else, you go help them work on the car, and it normally was there. But it's something that you wanted to do every week. You know?
You just have to get it ready, because back then, hell, everybody was younger, full of vinegar, and they just loved to be out there. It really gets in your blood. But as you get older, your blood kind of thins out a little bit.
It wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't high tech. It was real racing. It wasn't what you see now, which is, you know, timed racing. Whoever gets the best time. I went to the Indy 500, and I was bored to tears, you know, because I was expecting what I'd seen as a kid, which were these drivers like Griswold, I think his name was, and these guys they were just all out, and it was really driving. It wasn't just who owned the best yacht, and it was a real race.
I wouldn't have done it any other way. To meet the people that we'd been involved with over the period of years, the drivers and the mechanics and the people that I have met, it's just been a wonderful experience.
We'll be back in just a few minutes with the Pin Oak Charity Horse Show, the Houston Eagles, Buff Stadium, and broomball at the Polar Wave Ice Palace. Don't know what broomball is? Better stay tuned. So far, we've looked at some of the great amusement parks, ballrooms, and racetracks that provided entertainment for our community. But what else did we do for fun in the days when Houston was just a small town? Well, to that end, we are going to look at ice skating, baseball, and one of the major social events of the city, the Pin Oak Charity Horse Show. The roots of the Pin Oak Horse Show began in 1930 and 31, when the Junior League held the first Southwestern horse shows in Sam Houston Hall. The 1930 event competed for attention with the Dixie Kennel Club Dog Show. And in 1931, the horse competition was combined with an automobile exhibit. In 1945 and 46, the Houston Holiday Committee, carrying on the tradition of raising funds for local hospitals, held their own competitions. Then in 1947, J.S. Abercrombie built the Pin Oak Stables and initiated the Pin Oak Charity Horse Show with the goal of establishing Texas Children's Hospital.
I always like to see the ones that came in from, especially at Lexington, that had all these different little carriages and everything.
Your better horse riders that competed worldwide would come in and ride in the horse show.
They had the judged events and the for the different types of riding.
I believe it was both Mr. Meyer and Mr. Abercrombie that had the vision of a horse show that would support and bring in enough money that it would make it profitable donation for his dream, which was this Texas Children's Hospital Foundation.
Mr. and Ms. Abercrombie were so supportive, as was not only the society crowd in Houston, but the whole city of Houston.
The original founders of the Pin Oak Horse Show wrote their charter in 1947. That was the first year at the Pin Oak grounds. And the ones who were on that charter were Mr. Abercrombie, Mr. Leopold Meyer, Mr. Jody Hughes, Dr. James Hill, and Nowery Smith. Mr. Meyer was a confidant of Mr. Abercrombie's, and the two of them really backed this horse show for the proceeds for the hospital.
Now that was certainly a popular thing that we all did, and we worked as ushers, or you might graduate on to becoming a captain, and you showed people to their seats, or you worked on it and raised money for the horse show.
Our first show at the grounds in 1947, Mr. Abercrombie contacted the Houston Pediatric Society. They, in turn, presented to the Junior League the idea of letting the horse show be their charity event for the year, and they chose to do that and formed a wonderful ticket sales organization, and that year they raised $35,000 that went to the Texas Children's Hospital Foundation.
But it was a beautiful place. They had, the whole place would be decorated with roses around, and it was just like what you would see at a small-sized derby for the Kentucky Derby. So, but it was very nice.
The only horse show that I've ever been to, and I've been to most of them, had red roses in little plastic things like that, live red roses, all the way around the square of the judges' stand in the middle of the ring. Only show I've ever seen. I've seen flowers, but never displayed like that. And every night, about 30 or 45 minutes before the first class at 7 o'clock, the florists to come in and take yesterday's roses out and put the new ones in, every night.
It was a social event. It was a very glamorous affair. It was an outdoor show held in June, but people didn't seem to mind that. It was a packed audience, standing room only. The ring was outdoor, the seat area was covered. But in the middle of the ring there was a gazebo, a large gazebo. It actually housed an 18-piece orchestra. Jan Garber played every night for the show.
There was, of course, a circular arena where the horses would promenade. And the band was in a covered bandstand right in the middle of the circle. It was like putting the band out in the middle of the football field and doing the football around the band.
The walking horses came in, the different music. He was so used to the gates, you know, they would be entering the ring. And the three-gated, you know, the walk trot, and the five-gated usually came in pounding like they did.
Jan Garber would talk to me before each show and say, don't forget to give me the signal. And like a lot of places, you were far enough out away from the announcer that I'd come up with hand signals. It's just practical. This is walk. Put your hands out like that or like that quickly. That's walk, or hold them like that so everybody sees it. And this is for the riders also.
But people were dressed glamorously, beaded gowns, especially if you were presenting a ribbon in the ring. You would have on a cocktail dress of some kind. And it was, everyone dressed to come to the show. It was not a casual event at all.
My husband, Bill Larson, was trainer for the Abercrombie stable for many years and taught Josephine equitation.
Josephine showed in the very first shows, and I remember her showing. She was an elegant rider. She was a beautiful rider, as a matter of fact.
She knew what glamour meant, and she was glamorous, very attractive lady. And come in the ring, and wow, the crowd would go like this.
Joan was the leading horsewoman around the world. She won all of her trophies with beloved Belinda, and everyone knew who Joan Hill was, Joan Robinson Hill. And she had won her trophies worldwide.
When Joan would come in the ring, she was a local person for one, but she was also winning nationally. So our crowd really cheered Joan on and enjoyed her riding. She was a performer, an elegant performer.
Of course, when she'd make that pass and those 4 big spotlights, the rest of the house is black. They got that coming down the middle. And she got her head up with a big smile because she won the class, she's happy. And that was a real sensation to do that.
My mother was very conscious of what your looks, because that seemed to be higher than what your horse was doing.
In the jumper classes, when I'd call in, the judges say 2 faults or 4 faults or whatever was on the horse, and he'd call in and it was clean, he'd say, you know what was on that horse? Nary a one. I mean, that's put the schmaltz on the show, just instead of all clean. Anything to keep the crowd in the horse show and paying attention to what's going on.
The fine harness classes, the ladies were beautifully dressed, beaded gowns, some with large hats, all elegantly dressed.
When I was handing out ribbons, I'd give them the 4th ribbons in white. I'd say, here, I got a ball of dye, make that blue.
You know, the whole thing is exciting and always hoping you're going to win the blue ribbon in as many classes as possible.
The ballet, for me, was always the saddle horses and what they had to do to get the big candy. That's one guy said, called me at a horse show one time and said, who's winning all the big candy? In other words, who's first?
Oh, I looked forward to seeing people that I knew that, came every year. Oh, that was great.
Inside the Sponsors Club, it was a little White House on the grounds, separate from the arena itself, not very far, probably 20 yards from the arena.
So many people in the club there missed a lot of classes. Well, I couldn't afford to miss any class. No, I wanted to see them all.
A lot of rodeo people would come in with the big hats on and the boots, and somebody who played both sides of the street would say, you got the wrong boots on for this horse show.
It was for cocktails. You'd go there for refreshments, and it lasted, that club was just during the horse show, in other words. So it was contributed its share of income to the Children's Hospital in the overall picture.
And there was always a couple of great parties at the Shamrock at the end of the week celebrating the horse show, and I got to play those and also went to several of them.
In the early years before I was here, they had named people like Mr. Benny and Bob Hope. And one of the great things on Friday night was the Pin Oak party, and they served breakfast. Oh, of course, genuflect, Shamrock. Nothing better than the Shamrock back in those years.
We would always make sure that we went at least one night every season when the horse show was open. I also had a younger daughter who was absolutely crazy about horses.
It became an event, social event in Houston. If you haven't been to Pinocchio Horse Show, you haven't been anywhere.
The ice business was very productive in the 1920s, but not during the winter. As a result, the founders of the Polar Wave Ice Plant came up with a groundbreaking idea. They called it the Polar Wave Ice Palace.
I got figure skates for Christmas, and we would go out there. They kept it icy cold.
In about 1927, my father and my grandfather Link got the idea that it might be a good idea to build an ice skating rink. There was no ice skating rink in Houston. They had excess capacity at the ice plant in the wintertime because naturally you didn't sell as much ice in the wintertime.
The Eckhart family actually were the ones that owned the place, and the gentleman, the owner, was called Uncle Rudy. Everybody referred to him as Uncle Rudy Eckhart.
So we had a great year, opening year of the rink with lots of people skating, ice hockey, entertainment to the figure skaters. But the place lost a lot of money.
They had little shops where you could go in, and hot chocolate was a big thing, great big thing, because you had to warm up, you were freezing.
Yeah, well, of course we didn't have air conditioning in those days, so that was always nice and cool out at the skating rink.
We did doubles, you know, we'd cross hands and skate around. Boys, like I say, they would ask you to skate if you were anywhere near good, if you could just stand on your feet, actually.
Monday night was ladies' night, and all the ladies got in free, so all the boys followed. And it would be so thick in that place you couldn't skate. It just barely moved around. The traffic went around clockwise in the rink.
I never learned to skate. My ambition was not to fall down. And I would spend the whole time going hand over hand on the rink. And other people were falling down, but they were skating. And I still remember it as a great principle that you've got to risk the fall in order to get the skate.
I had a big Aggie buckle on my belt, said Texas A&M on the front of it in maroon. My dad paid real good money for that belt. And I slipped and fell flat on my tummy and bent that buckle and scratched all the enamel off of the front of it. It killed me.
Sonia Henney was so popular with all of her movies. It seemed like everyone was buying all of the pretty little costumes and going and taking ice skating lessons. And it was popular for years because in high school at San Jacinto there was an ice skating club. And even though it was war years, it was one of the largest clubs in the school, and everyone would still go to Polar Wave and ice skate.
It was very much the custom to have, you know, the junior high school age people that you'd have birthday parties there, though. Mamas would load up 4 or 5 kids in a car, and you'd wind up with 25 kids and have a skating party for your birthday.
And they would have a ladies skating, they would have men skating, they would have couples skating, and this was all to music. They always had music in the background. Then they also would clean the ice off and have broomball games, not hockey, but broomball.
During the regular skating sessions, we needed something to create a little interest during what we'd have a sort of maybe a 5-minute intermission in the regular skating. And I believe it was my idea that to put a soccer ball out there, put the hockey nets on there like you were going to play ice hockey, put a soccer ball out there, and give as many kids as wanted to brooms. The idea was they'd sweep the soccer ball gently down from one end to the other and try to get it in the goal. Well, it would have been a nice, mild game. It didn't work that way.
You take a broom, a standard old broom, you cut the handle off and cut the broom part down to where it's maybe 8 or 10 or 12 inches, and you wrap tape around that thing, and you'd use a soccer ball. And I got swatted one time and broke my nose, and boy, I was bleeding like a stuck hog. Took a swat at the ball, trying to defend the guy, and he missed the ball and came right up across, hit me right across the nose. I thought I was going to die.
You realize you got to 20 or 30 people out there kicking around and running around, and they might have 4 goaltenders down there, you know. When they really against getting as many people in front of the net as you could get out there.
We used to play ice hockey here in Houston years ago when I played in high school. And anyone that's on the ice, if you've been familiar with ice skating or ice hockey, you always looked up to the people that did all the stuff they did on the ice.
But Father Laurie over at St. Thomas, he loved to skate, and he was a good hockey player. If he wanted, instead of being a priest, if he wanted to play ice hockey, he could have played on any professional team in the country.
Father Lowry came down to St. Thomas, I'm a guess, in about the early 30s to mid-30s, and started the first hockey team in Houston.
We didn't have the equipment like you have today. We had shin pads and hip pads, and gloves. That's about it.
We had quite a good time playing hockey there and doing the ice skating. Those were the happy days before the war.
Polar Wave was just a fun place to go, and you always knew that you would probably see your friends from the other schools there that you didn't see during the week.
In 1949 and 50, lots of friends gathered at the Buffalo Stadium when the city had its only team in the Negro American League. The Houston Eagles had a lot of local talent to draw upon.
The Eagles, when they came to town, I went to Fred Marshall, and I asked him to get me a tryout with the Eagles. They were training here in Houston, and the very first day I went out there, I got the job.
My dad played for the Newark Eagles, and they eventually became the Houston Eagles. And I know that several people in this area played for the Houston Eagles.
I was playing with the Greyhounds here in Houston at that time, and we were scheduled, the best team in Houston was scheduled to play the pro team that was training here. And they were living out the Club Matinee out in the 5th Ward, beautiful place. And I went out and I seen the ball players, how they were living. I said, oh, if I could just get into this type of life.
He told me he couldn't hit for power that much, but he got his share of singles and doubles and people in scoring position, moving the runners, things like that. And I think that was all part of the strategy of the game too. He was a great student of game strategy.
At the end of the day, I said, well, I'll see you all in Victoria. We're going to play against you Sunday. And Red Parnell, which was the manager of the Eagles, he said, well, I don't see how you're going to be in 2 places at one time, 2 dugouts at one time. So he goes, you'll be on our dugout. We hired you today.
I found out that he played for a number of different teams, and the teams barnstormed through Mexico. When he played for Newark, he played in several all-star games, and they would play a doubleheader, ride a bus all night, and then play another doubleheader the next day.
We were playing every night and a doubleheader on Sunday, so it was just second nature to us. Pick the ball up and do what needs to be done. When you do it every day, you become a professional at it. So it's just impossible almost to beat us. It's not no such thing we're gonna have no bad night. Black teams would come through here and they'd play each other. And they used to draw just about as well as the Buffs did, perhaps better. They had a lot of great players, and it was an art form kind of. You'd go because they played so well.
You had a seating capacity of approximately 9,000. Sometimes there might be 12,000 in there, but what they would do is they would line the outfield off with ropes, and all of the people would go into the outfield, and then they would make special ground rules. So if a ball was hit into the people, well, then it was a ground rule double.
Because it was a huge amount of those guys that were in this city. And some of them were major league quality ball players. We had people like J.B. Walker, Charlie Walker, Eunice Davis, and George Davis. These guys were tremendously great baseball players. These are guys that I tutored under who would show you how to throw the curveball, how to hit.
But I enjoyed meeting the players. Someone used to come to my store, Minnie Minoso,
Larry Doby, Don Newcomb. My favorite was Satchel Paige because he come around and shoot the breeze with you and stay around there all day and talk to you.
At those days and times, if you were a good baseball player, everyone in the community knew you because you won a game for our community.
He played with the best, and he got a chance to see the best in those games. And those are really the memories. And I think I asked him when I was talking to him, I said, well, how would you like to be remembered? And he just thought for a bit, and he said, just as somebody who had an opportunity to help and did.
Starting in 1928, Buffalo Stadium became the home of the Texas League Houston Buffs, a St. Louis Cardinal affiliate. For local fans, the memories carry on like they were yesterday.
Big league clubs would go to Florida or Arizona or wherever they're going to go, as would the minor league club. And they'd get their team lined up and get in shape and so forth. And then coming home, in the Cardinals' case, from St. Petersburg, Florida to St. Louis, they would go through some of their main minor league towns and play exhibition games.
I remember one time I went and they played St. Louis Cardinals, and they beat the Cardinals. I remember that they had a first baseman that I saw him hit a home run, Johnny Hernandez.
And that baseball was a big deal, you know, and so the only baseball that you really got to see was at Buff Stadium. And I can remember seeing the Yankees come down to, you know.
And we get to see all the big stars of St. Louis. Houston was really hubbed when they were in town. And I remember Dizzy got on that mound and hardly anybody even fouled the ball off. He just whiffed them.
The St. Louis Cardinals built Buff Stadium in 1928, and they owned the ballpark and the facilities through 1958.
I remember when they built it, and I know that I was there, and I know I was trying to sneak in one time. I made it with a bunch of boys. We got in there, and all the boys, they went one way, and I was stood there, and then finally nobody was around me, so I snuck in and got into the ballpark.
Oh yeah, my uncle had a box over there. And I remember they had a second baseman named Pop-Up Johnny King. Old Johnny, one time he fielded the ball at second base and threw it. Instead of throwing to first base, he threw the ball plumb out of the stadium.
Buff Stadium, to me, has three eras. You have the era between 1928 to the beginning of the war, and then you have the war years, and then after the war until the Colt 45s came in.
I was in the nut hole game, and I could get in any time for 10 cents. And many a night, myself along with Clarence Sheps and 2 or 3 other boys would get on the Montrose streetcar, ride out and transfer and go to the old Buffalo Stadium, go in and sit in the knot hole game.
The knot hole game was situated in the right field stands behind first base.
And it was kind of a long way away from home plate, but the greatest thing was that the players right there where the knothole gang sat was where the dressing room was, back in behind that. And so the players would come in and out of there going to and from the locker room. And they were always very generous to stop and talk to the kids. And we all had autograph books, and we had our old Brownie camera, and we used to take their pictures.
I kept their batting averages, the number of errors they made. I really evaluated them, and I kept a little book on all of it. Every once in a while I think about how much fun I had just keeping up with those players.
During the years 1928 to 1941, Fred Ankerman was the president and general manager of the ball club. Those were the days when some of their initial ball players were Wild Bill Hallahan, pitched for the Buffs, and Dizzy Dean. And there are stories about Dizzy Dean and Mr. Ankerman. They say one of the stories is that sometime on the road, Dizzy Dean came in real early morning hour showed up, and Mr. Ankelman was in the lobby, and Dizzy's comment was, well, I won't tell anyone about this if you won't.
So I went up and said, Mr. Dean, would you give us an autograph on a paper? And he said, why, sure. Don't call me Mr. Call me Dizzy. So we thought we was big, and he got to asking us all about where we went to school, and you know. And he signed one of the autographs, and I had 50 papers under my arms. And somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, hell, Dean, sign them all. So he signed 50 of my papers.
Well, Eddie Dyer was the manager of the Buffs in 1939 through 1941.
The first, in quotation marks, big job he got with them was managing the Houston Buffs. And he had 3 successful years in the late 30s. They won the pennant every year, clinched it one year in July. And his biggest frustration was that he never won the Dixie Series.
After 1941 and the war broke out, the Cardinals closed down the stadium in 1942.
All the kids went off to war, and they didn't have enough ball players to have minor league ball, so it was stopped for the duration. Major League Ball, Roosevelt decided to continue for general morale, I guess.
And so they formed what they call the South Coast Victory League. And the South Coast Victory League was made up of these semi-pro teams like the Brown Shipyards, Houston Shipyards, and then it branched out into the Army bases because the Special Services set up teams at all the Army bases, and the ball players, the professional ball players, were on these teams, and so quite a few of these Army bases really had great ball clubs.
The only time in its history, I guess, that Buff Stadium wasn't used for regular professional baseball.
Probably the team that's best known after the war was the 47 Buff team.
In 1947, we won it all. We won the straight-through championship, we won the playoffs, and won the Dixie Series.
Jerry Burmeister and Joe Neatson were the catchers, and Johnny Hernandez was the first baseman. Solly Hemus played second base for us, and Solly and Billy Costa formed the Keystone combination for us. Solly would have a way of just letting the pitch nick him, an inside pitch nick him on the shirt. Of course, he might actually get, he'd get hit too.
We did not always get the top young players that they thought would eventually go to the major leagues. We got the proven players that could play at this level. Of course, the Texas League was a pretty strong league in those days.
It was a real good place to be, and they played some awful good baseball.
For most people, the Houston area has always been a great place to live, and this Houstonian by choice would have to agree. I'm Nancy Ames. I hope you've enjoyed sharing some of the memories, or perhaps that you've learned something else about this place we call home. Thanks again for watching, and may your future days be full of fun.
Houston Public Television's production, Houston Remember When, Just for Fun, is made possible in part through grants from the Fondren Foundation, Shell Oil Company Foundation, on behalf of the employees of Shell Oil Company, and Houston Endowment, a philanthropy endowed by Mr. and Mrs. Jesse H. Jones.
you.